Okay. All right, so here we are again inside another Paradigm Shift London open-minded discussion and meditation circle with another question. And before we get to the question, of course, reminding everybody to start up a Paradigm Shift community where they are. It's very simple. Check out all the info on the main website, paradigmshiftcentral.com. This week's question, we are approaching the question of what is sacred? What does sacred mean to us? What is sacred to us? What is a sacred experience? And going beyond just the idea of sacred geometry, but really just trying to just explore what that means. So we're going to go around the circle, and Emily is going to start us off. So Emily, just answering that, what is sacred?
Well, sacredness is one of those things that there's kind of two sides to it. There's the personal side of what you personally think sacred means and is, and then there's kind of the accepted definition of it. And mine personally, my definition of it has to do with appreciation. I think something that is sacred is appreciated, and you can make something sacred by appreciating it. And I was thinking specifically to days, just every single day. It's sacred if you appreciate it, but yet it can be not sacred to you if you do not appreciate it. Brendan had a great example of Mars bars, having 100 Mars bars. And I thought, yeah, Mars bars, they could be sacred if it's exactly what you want, but usually they're probably not very sacred to you. But not only with the number, if you have a lot of something, then the individual pieces of it may not seem as sacred just because you appreciate it less. But then relating to the environment and the experience, if you had 100 Mars bars, sure, the Mars bars aren't really that sacred to you, but then if you had 100 Mars bars and you're dying of hunger in the desert, maybe they're a little bit more sacred. And that can be applied to a lot of things. Like, what I find really amazing is that anything can be sacred. It doesn't even have to be an object or a person or an experience. It can be something non-physical. Well, I guess the color red comes to my mind just for some reason, but like to some people and in some circumstances, like something as small or as seemingly meaningless as a color can be really sacred to somebody. Cool. And that is sacred to me.
Cool. Right on. All right. Pass. Yes. Okay. Nate Dogg.
Hello, Internet and the universe. I think everything is sacred, but what is most sacred of all to me is an idea. For an idea can be salvation, or an idea can be dooming. Either way, that idea has the potential to change everything around it. And one idea can lead to many other ideas. So that's what I think.
Nice. Jesse?
Okay. So I heard someone use the word like spiritual mass earlier, and that gave me the idea when referring to sacredness about how many people wailed at the Wailing Wall. It almost like lends like spiritual gravity to that place, and when you go near it, you feel the attractive force of all that energy that's been poured in there. And our bodies like create this energy somehow, and we're able to dispense it and change it into positive and negative forms. And we can place a lot of value in something and an intention to create a sacred object or a sacred place. And that's it.
Cool. All right. Bruce?
I believe that unity is a sacred thing, and that connection to people, earth, and all comes from the same source, which is God, in my view. And it was all created all in 7 days, and it's all interconnected. So the unity of it all.
Cool. John?
Sacred. What is sacred to everyone? Probably not much. What is sacred to certain people? Each person determines what is sacred to them. Some objects and places are considered sacred for the last few thousand years and have had pilgrims go to these places and invest a great amount of emotion into these places themselves. And then some things are just objects that may come through our lives. And then the story that they take part in makes them something sacred, but maybe just to you, unless you pass it on to someone else who adds to that story. So the amount of energy invested over time and the intention and level of that energy can make an impact on an item, whether others feel it or not. Our whole experience could be thought of as sacred, and the people who walk in a sacred flow are like those animals in nature that seem to know intuitively that the scene is perfect the way it is, and they are part of the scene. A person who walks a sacred path is just as much part of the scene as the natural animals there. A person who walks a path that is very controlled by things like time and measurement and judgment and schedule and clocks and all of these things, well, that breaks you out of the sacred flow, of the natural ebb and flow of your own day and reality. So the closer you get to maintaining a sacred profile where you are flowing with the sacred geometry, whether it's sacred geometry that, for instance, today happens to be the third day of the first year of, well, the 15th year of the third millennium. So this is a very sacred day according to astrological things. And there are very many planets aligned in certain ways on a day such as today. So you can act on sacred geometry, which has been practiced for thousands of years, and you can act on sacred objects and sacred places within the world. But what makes them sacred is up to you. If you don't see something as sacred, it may never be.
John?
Okay, well, not much left to be said here. We covered an awful lot here, but you could say that sacred is when you can look beyond the thing, the animal, the object, whatever it is, and look to its meaning, whether that meaning is to something for you personally or that meaning is in a larger picture. Perhaps it speaks towards your spirituality, speaks towards your religion, speaks towards your people, your culture, and you have a reverence for it and appreciation, as Emily said. Then that's really what you will then define sacred. It is a personal experience for most people, although they can be, as John said, shared among some people. Is definitely how it speaks to you inside.
Cool. All right. Rob? Pass. Tom? Pass. Haley? What is sacred? Haley?
Okay, sorry, I was just... Okay, this morning I had an experience where I was thinking about something and then my mood kind of changed and it was like a really good thought that I was having, and then suddenly my computer turned on and it was like a really good song that was playing, and I realized, and I went out of the room and I said it, that everything that we touch is sacred because we have the intention of doing sacred things or creating sacred around us, and also because of the way that we like appreciate life and stuff like that, because everything comes from something that evolves from some form of like life or earth, that
And everything's
it's all
connected.
sacred. Yeah, exactly.
So it all has a purpose. It's all sacred because it's all here. Everything here is made by sacred source.
Exactly. And yeah, and then we were also just saying like that everything around us was sacred because everything that we were manifesting around us or doing was sacred. So that made
Your actions.
that made everything around us, and around that, anything that was even a part of it in any way, even close to it, is now part of that sacred process.
Basically anything we touch.
Yeah.
You guys got the magic. Cool. All right. Cool. Tyler.
Yeah, everything that was said there was really sacred. That's good. Yeah, I liked it, yeah.
Cool. Cool. All right. Good job, Tyler. Nicole.
What? Oh,
Yeah.
I guess I know I was speaking. But that's all right. I guess anything that I'd say would be sacred is anything that's living, breathing on the planet Earth or in the universe. I'd like to think, just because to give thanks really to anything that gives us life or helps us keep living and breathing, like food, for example, or things we consider food, like plantations, anything that's vegetation, even animals. There's a reason why tribes and other cultures, and we've done it now until this point, have given rituals and give thanks to pretty much anything that has been able to sustain us and give us life. And yeah, I think just really anything is sacred. I believe like other people are sacred, and it's just that everything's sort of special if you think it's special, right? Like even your own room can be sacred, and it's a place that you cherish and you can go to and to be alone. And yeah.
Cool. Nice. All right. Okay, so just a couple of clothing thoughts there of my own. I really enjoyed the conversation that we had here today. A lot of new ideas sort of came to my mind as we were talking about it. Obviously, as sort of discussed within this first segment, going around the circle, what is sacred can be a very subjective thing, which I think is the whole point. And I sort of talked about like how sacredness is something that like is asked of us, of the universe. The universe will say like, can you see the sacredness in me? And then like we as the humans will be like, no, I choose to like refute that sacredness, or I choose to ignore it. But then other times it would be like, yes, of course it is there. And then also sacredness is this idea of like, it is a measure of an emotional or an energetic investment into something, and that something can be an object, that something can be a moment, an experience, or even a person. You can say like this experience for me right now is a very sacred experience. And I think to sort of root it back, I think sacredness, if we were to sort of decide what the word means for myself, I think sacredness sort of refers to like the ability for source itself to flow through, to be represented within that which is sacred. And kind of like a metaphor that I gave for that is to even think about like our own body as being sacred. And when something is like in its nature divinely sacred, source is flowing through it as it should. And that's where you get into the idea of sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is like the fundamental blueprint upon which all of this reality is structured, but it's also the way how we live our actions. Like our choices are sacred geometry as well. And the metaphor I was going to use was this idea that like as our own body, our body has the potential to be sacred, and sort of referring to it as the metaphor of like saying our body is a river, and the water that is flowing through the river is source, is like pure life source, is love itself. And then our job is to be able to like allow this water to flow through as fluid as it possibly can. And over time, as we sort of live our lives, a lot of us will sort of put a lot of junk into this water. Like we will pollute the waters, we will create obstructions. And then as a result of that, the sacredness of the flow itself is obstructed. And then from that, in that sense, you can sort of look at something and measure it and say like, is this thing more sacred than that thing? And you could almost use this definition and say like, technically this is more sacred because like source itself is flowing through it with more ease, with more effectiveness, with less dis-ease sort of thing. So I think in that sense, sacredness is in itself everything, but at its core, sacredness is love in its most authentic form. And even the idea that, like going back to what we were talking about in the meeting with crystals and everything like that, if you take a crystal and you invest an emotion into it, you invest a story into it, and then you share that with someone else, and so you take this crystal with you, and that can become sacred for them in the same way that you could take something that is just completely like arbitrary, just like a rock or just like a token, something that connects us to a memory that reminds us of the fact that perhaps we are alive, of the fact that we are an extension of this universe. So I mean that in itself is sacred. I think sacred is a lens through which we remind ourselves of our interconnectedness to this reality, to source, to life itself, and the fact that we are an extension. We are that which is all that is, sort of thing. So that would be my final thoughts. But yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I think for people watching this, ask yourself and leave comments below. What does sacred mean to you? What is sacred to you? And really sort of take some time to reflect on it, sort of thing. Because I think through the process of asking the question, it's not about finding a single answer, but it is the question itself that reveals more about yourself through the process, sort of thing. So yeah, the truth lies between the question and the answer, as I say. But we'll wrap it up there. And again, ParadigmShiftCentral.com. Listen to Paradigm Shift Radio. Check out the website. And everybody here, join me in saying farewell to the internet. Say bye, internet. Bye, internet. Bye, internet. Woo, bye, internet. Woo. Okay, cool. All right. See you. Let's go meditate.
Yes to the answer.
Yeah.